Whoa! There's another Midas alert right now. I'll talk to you later, Doc.
Okay, Dizzy. Good luck.
Now let's see what's on the screen. Uh-oh. It looks like some kids have gotten into trouble, and their parents are upset with them. I better turn up the sound.
I don't know what to do with you, Devora. You know it's your job to clear off the table. Why do I have to come into the kitchen and find that nothing's been done?
And what about you, Chaim? I asked you to pack up these forum for our trip to the mountains hours ago. Why haven't you done it yet?
Why do we always have so many jobs to do? It's not fair.
Yeah, my friend Label tells me his parents never ask him to do anything.
Hey! Don't those kids realize there's a mitzvah of Kibbud Av Le'im? They should be happy to help their parents.
And just a curiosity question. Kibbud Av Le'im is a mitzvah from the Torah. Why is there no bracha? You do a mitzvah.
When you have a baby, you say a bracha. So when you're becoming a parent, you say a bracha. You say Shechachiyonu.
You make the bracha. But the child who is fulfilling the mitzvah of Kibbud Av, why doesn't he make a bracha?
Because he'll be making a bracha every single day, every single second of his life.
That's nice. That's like a guy who eats a lot. He makes a bracha all the time.
Or one bracha in the morning, like we say for learning, right? We do.
I think technically, halachically, the reason is you can't make a bracha on a mitzvah that is dependent on somebody else. Like, why don't you make a bracha for tzedakah? Before you put money in the pushka, why don't you make a bracha? Asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu litein tzedakah. Or al mitzvahs tzedakah, or something like that. That's because you may offer the tzedakah and the poor man can refuse it. So they made a bracha levatala. So any mitzvah that is dependent on another person, it's not yours to make a bracha on. Now parents are allowed to refuse the kavod. If they're meichel, then it's not a mitzvah anymore. So it's a mitzvah that is dependent on whether your parents will accept it. So if it's dependent on another person, you can't make a bracha. In psychological language, you could say, if you offer when they don't want, like there are children who think they're honoring their parents, but in ways that the parents don't want. So the parents are actually resentful. How can you make a bracha on that? You're abusing your parents, not honoring them. And the same thing with a poor man. You can embarrass him by giving him money. He can resent it. So as soon as there's another person involved, it gets a little too sensitive, delicate. So you can't make a bracha because you never know how it's gonna be received. Now, in general, before we get to the specific mitzvah, there are moral issues and there are health issues. They're not the same thing. There are issues of Yirah Shamayim and there are issues of mental health, psychological health. They're not the same thing. Before we all became psychologists, amateur psychologists, there was only one issue. There was only one objective. There was only one concern, and that is it kosher? Is it right? What does the halacha say? Those were the only rules we lived by. Is it right? Is it kosher? Is it allowed? Is it treif? Is it forbidden? What's? There were no other issues. Then we became aware that the way you talk to your child can have an emotional impact on his future and on his emotional stability, and all of a sudden, that became our biggest concern. So at best, we now have two agendas going on at the same time. At worst, the psychological issue has become much more important. That itself makes it hard to get children to behave properly. Meaning, the very fact that in your own mind and heart you have two agendas, they both become weaker. In the olden days, when we had only one agenda, that was so clear, so strong, so obvious, so easily enforced, because children don't mess with what is most important and absolutely non-negotiable to you. Today everything's negotiable because it may be halachic, but it's psychologically damaging. It may be psychologically okay, but there's a halacha. So all of a sudden one compromises the other, and all of a sudden you're not sure what you want to do. You're not sure what you want to do, the kid is certainly not going to respond. You think about it, make up your mind, and get back to me. So as soon as the child feels like you're not sure, he tunes you out. So let's look at this for an example. How do we teach our children kibud av v'em? Why is that a question? How did you teach your children to keep kosher? You sat down, you talked to them about it, you made a farbrengen, you gave them samples of kosher food to show them how good it tastes. What did you do to get them to keep kosher? Nothing. Today, if it's out of the question, but it's not a project.
So that's something they have less control over, because they don't control what comes into the house. It's just they give them food. But they do have control over what comes out of their mouth. Their actions.
I was thinking more like with kosher, it's absolutely you don't mix milk and meat. But like for a child, like a 4-year-old child, to sit in the parent's chair, it's like much more so blurry. Like the child doesn't understand. Oh, I can't sit in this chair. Like,
what doesn't he understand?
Like if their booster seat, for example, accidentally gets moved into the place of his father's chair, for example, like this is something that it really begins to blur. Well, all of Kibbutz Ava, it becomes very like, starts to begin, when you take something so simple like don't sit in your parent's chair, like that should be so clear, and even that becomes blurry.
How? Why doesn't milk and meat become blurry? Milchig is milchig. A chair is more obvious than a drop of milk. How did that become blurry? You have to put a sign on the chair, reserved for dad. So I think that's one of the symptoms, one of the victims of this psychology halacha debate. With meat and milk, there's no psychology. When it comes to honoring parents, you feel a little nervous. Am I damaging my kid? Am I demanding too much? And also, halachically, not that anybody really cares about this, but halachically, if you don't mind, then it's okay. So you don't mind. But that's not doing your kid a favor. So, honoring parents, like everything else, it has a certain basic assumption behind it that gives it its backbone. The basic assumption is, you're a child and I'm a mother. And that's light years apart. When a child says, well, you never give me, so I'm not going to give you. See, the whole backbone is missing. The whole foundation is missing. The thought that the child and the parent are pretty much equal and you have to negotiate deals, that means that the whole foundation is missing. The fundamental principle is, your mother is your mother, not your friend, not your servant, not your pet. Yeah, it gets that bad. And that is not negotiable. It's not like, well, my mother did something bad. It doesn't. A mother is a mother, a child is a child, and they will never be equal. That's the fact. I mean, that's just a child who doesn't have that permanently installed in their brain is missing the foundation, and therefore there's nothing to build on. So you can talk and talk and talk. It doesn't go anywhere. And in your own mind, you have to have that clarity or that confidence. You're a mother, and the child is just a child, with opinions, with wants, with tantrums, but just a child. A helpless little creature. So if we can put the foundation in place, makes everything else so much easier. But then you read books on child raising, you read articles on child raising, and all of a sudden you're not sure. You're not sure that you're any smarter than your kid. Because all the secular articles, all the secular wisdom, all the secular advice seems to be saying that your child is just as smart as you and maybe smarter. So beg his forgiveness. Plead with him to let you be his mother. And if he's nice, he'll let you. That's not the way it works. So even having this conversation could be a little damaging. Like, what are we talking about? Are we actually asking whether you're in charge? Are we actually asking whether you have the authority to raise your child? I mean,
How far do you go?
What is it? As far as you want. What's the limit? Age is a limit. When they're 19, I think you got to lighten up. But the fundamental never changes, even when they're 70. The other day, my mother was telling me what I should do and correcting me, and one of the nephews said, "Oh my God, I got nothing to look forward to."